Guys, I was thinking to myself the other day, it's been a while since I did a video on stall in the metagame, and I was really thinking as to why that was the case. And the more and more I think about it, the more I realize that despite playing thousands and thousands of games in this meta, I can count the number of times in my hand that I've lost to a stall team since DLC 2 was released, and that number is probably like 3 or 4, honestly, and that's through playing every single day, dozens of games, and I'm thinking, why is that the case? Why is it the case for me, but yet so many people find stall so problematic and troublesome? And there are a couple things. First off, what people qualify as stall. So, stall is not just any team with a Clefable or a Toxpex or a bulky Pokemon. In fact, a lot of those teams are balanced. For example, you could use a team that has Clefable as a stealth rock setter, or a Calm Mind win condition, or Toxpex as a physical or special wall, but you pair that team with, multiple offensive Pokemon, say a proper Revenge Killer and a Breaker or two, or a win condition on the more offensive end of the spectrum, that is more of a balanced team. In fact, you can even see Clefable, not necessarily Toxpex, but Clefable on more bulky offensive teams, which really only rely on it and maybe one other pivot, such as a Mandibuzz or a Zapdos as the Fogger, and then, a couple fast Pokemon, a couple strong Pokemon, a win condition here and there, and yeah, it's more of a bulky offensive team, but let's say that you guys are understanding of what, the line is between more of a balanced team, more of a semi-stall team, which would be a stall team with maybe a single fast Pokemon or a single win condition, and then a full stall team, which is tried and true stall. Let's say you are aware of that. Because if you guys need to know the distinction, then A, let me know in the comments and I can kind of explain it in more depth, and, well, B, that would require a totally different video, which I could spend a long time on unwrapping that whole TLDR that I just went through. But let's say you do, and if not, then let's say you still have a general idea of, what stall is. Cue picture of 3 regenerators switching around for 150 turns. And generally speaking, stall teams consist of a couple of types of Pokemon. Physical walls, special walls, Pokemon that check really like specifically threatening Pokemon, such as say, Buzzwole is great at checking Kartana, and other Pokemon you mentioned, Groudon, or Shifu, Pokemon Stall might struggle with. Okay, great. Always gotta have a ground type, always gotta have Stealth Rock, oftentimes it's have multiple defoggers. Always needs a fairy type, steel types are more likely than not gonna be ran, etc. Stall teams, they have a certain checklist, and this isn't gonna be a video on how to build stall. If you guys want that, well, it might not be the best video because I feel like a lot of people would hate on it, but just let me know in the comments. I'll talk to you guys privately about it, but stall teams often have Pokemon like the ones we see in the first 2 rows. Bulky Pokemon, Pokemon that fulfill specific defensive roles, Clefable, Blissey, Toxpex, Buzzwole, Hippowdon, Tangrowth. They're just some examples, and I'm not going to be going into a ton of detail on them because this video is not about them, and you'll see what the video is about in a second if you just bear with me. And then, hazard removal. Pokemon that can remove hazards from the field so that switching is, not punished. Zapdos, Corviknight, Mandibuzz, Moltres, Hydreigon, Skarmory is the primary example in the game right now. And these Pokemon are great. And, you could build a team of these 6, or you include other Pokemon that aren't quite in these 12 Pokemon. And you're going to form a fine stall team. So it'll do okay in the ladder. But I think the reason why it's so successful is because people don't really know how to approach it. People don't really know how to play against it. People don't really game plan against stall like they do against offensive teams. And that's because it's not as linear. However, I think that there are some really natural ways to beat stall, or at least not lose to stall and then eventually find an opening. Now see, what's really bad about stall in this particular part of the generation, DLC 2, and why this video is going to be titled something like, oh, Finch exposes stall, or whatever, I don't know. I'm not going to title it. That's lame. No, that's not the title. Screw that. But the point is that when stall faces a balanced team with enough longevity, the stall team's almost always going to be incapable of breaking through that team if it's played well, and there's not like a specific win condition or more of a semi-stall with more of an offensive force towards its progression. Why is that? Because the teams are going to last just as long as each other, but the more balanced team is going to have holes where potentially openings or potentially either luck its way to a win or just outright win. Sorry, I have to take a sip of water, and that includes when used alongside things like breakers that you see on balanced teams. There are a ton of. So first off, I want to say that stall versus balance is something that a lot of people generalize. So, oh no, my balance team can't break stall. Your balance team can absolutely break stall if it's built properly. If it has enough longevity coupled with breakers. And if it doesn't have enough longevity, then odds are it's more of an offensive team to begin with, so you're misgeneralizing. But that's neither here nor there. And you see Pokemon like, say, Clefable, Magic Guard, so it's not taking hazard damage, you can switch it forever. Regenerator Pokemon like Toxpex, Tornadus, Slowbro, now Slowbro Galar, which should have Regenerator. All these Pokemon should have Regenerator. You get the point. all these Pokemon with Regenerator, it's hard for these teams to actually kill them. And the things that can kill them, a Zapdos against the Waters and the Flying types, it's very easy for teams to switch into normally, because especially defensive Zapdos, it's not actually breaking through teams. So, yeah, I mean, it should go without saying that it inherently favors teams that. Here, let me break it down even more. If two teams can both outlast, the immediate offensive presence that they have, then it goes without saying that it's going to take a while for that game to be won. However, if one team has more offensive presence and more firepower, then it is more likely to win that game, so long as there is equal defensive longevity on them, because that firepower, that longevity, makes so that there's a chance, if I get a crit on turn X, or if I get a secondary effect on turn Y, then I can start breaking through it. And once one thing falls down in stall teams, and this is the big kind of thesis of this video, once they lose one crucial breaker, oftentimes something that's compressed to cover multiple things, all of a sudden the whole team slowly starts to fall apart. It's put on a timer. And if you put that stall team on a timer, then all of a sudden you're going to outlast it. You're going to win. You're going to break through. You're going to take advantage. They're going to be forced to make aggressive plays. You just got to catch them in a couple of turns, and all of a sudden the game ends. It's just like playing against other teams. It's really not the most radical thought. You don't have to look at it like upside down. You have to look at it totally differently. And I feel like a lot of players, they kind of tunnel vision, like, oh no, I have to bring this single Pokemon that 6 of those stall teams, or the single core to 6 of those. You don't have to do that. You can. It's one way of beating stall, and some of these Pokemon that I call stall killers can do that. But also, they're just ways to naturally beat stall. And if you have enough patience, then it's just very likely over as turns elapse. And they're not taking an hour to play these games. It really isn't. And people just are naturally just incapable of processing that. And they, instead of rationalizing it and trying to play it out, they just naturally complain. And you know what? For people to do that, that's your problem. I go out of my way to say things like Toxic were broken in the prior metagame because I genuinely believe it did. But it wasn't just because of stall. It was because of what it did to the metagame when it was more hyper-offensive too, and how it just completely limited things. And now we have a metagame that finally has so many things that could abuse it and abuse other defensive Pokemon, and people are still finding ways to complain, when in reality, stall right now is worse than it was at any point previously this generation, besides the Dynamax days. Worse than it was any point last generation, besides the super broken early stages. And honestly, worse than it was during most of Generation 6 too. So, if you guys are complaining now, then that's on you. And especially because last generation we had to ban trappers for the sake of stall teams being limited. In prior generations we had to ban trappers and things like Mega Sableye. This generation we haven't had to actually ban anything because stall actually hasn't really ever been that good. And yeah, there was a time during DLC 1, during OLT ladder, where it was at its peak, but even then it was super beatable through these same means. And stall has gotten very, very little in addition. It's gotten Zapdos, Moltres, and Buzzwole. And, those Pokemon aren't even necessarily staples in the metagame on those teams. Whereas there's just more and more and more breakers added to the metagame. So, you know what? Not only do I, believe stall is just so mediocre and very easy to beat with any decently built team with longevity. And if you're going to use a flimsy, bulky offense, then yes, you absolutely need to have the firepower to muscle through it. But that goes without saying. That's how bulky offenses always function. That's nothing new. But also, I'm going to go through some Pokemon that really can not necessarily 6-0 stall single-handedly, but play a role towards beating stall. And why that is the case, and break that down for you guys, just so you at least know what to integrate these Pokemon in your teams and your cores. So maybe instead of complaining, you've been like, wow, Finch, stall is too strong. Being like, you know what, I'm going to try this out. I'm going to get more experience with it. I'm going to play out some games. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to get better. And I'm actually going to stop complaining and instead notice that this is actually manageable. Because, look, if it were almost any other metagame state and stall was at least consistently viable and consistently effective, I'd get it. Even if I didn't necessarily think it's broken, at least I'd get it because it's hard for people to adapt to it, especially with good stuff. But right now, the metagame is just so wide open and so, in my opinion, fun and more fast-paced that, you really can't spin that, argument. Without being, and to put it bluntly, ignorant, you can't say that. So I'm just going to pause for 1 second, and then I'm going to discuss some Pokemon that could really thrive against stall teams. Alright, I'm back. So here are the first kind of wave of Pokemon that, in my opinion, can always make progress against stall teams, and I'm going to give explanations as why. I'm not giving full sets because a lot of these Pokemon are pretty good Pokemon that have a lot of versatility, but Pokemon that, if you play them properly, you don't rush them, and over time, they will naturally erode away at bulkier teams. First one's Heatran. Heatran's kind of an obvious one. Magma Storm traps things like Toxapex, attacks things like Blissey. Stealth Rock plus Taunt or Toxic really makes it so that it can threaten and potentially beat every single defogger, especially with Gliscor not being in the game. Forcing Stealth Rock up, forcing, specific switching patterns, and forcing potential traps. All of those things alone are very valuable. Heatran is a Pokemon that is super viable on balance and bulky offensive teams. Standard sets are always going to be forcing progress against stall teams. If you don't let it get knocked off trail, if you don't let it take too much damage early in the game, it's going to naturally be a positive presence for you in these matchups. Unless you're facing a Moltres and you don't have Toxic, in which case, okay, then Scorching Star and Moltres versus non-Toxic variants, that is fair. But that aside, it's pretty hard for you to really go wrong there. And this is a Pokemon you see all the time. This is one of the Pokemon that pretty much mandated things like Gliscor, especially defensive Mew with Earthquake on the Stall team's last generation, and with neither of those Pokemon being particularly common anymore. Well, Gliscor not being in the game, of course, it would be very common if it was viable, and Mew just not being seen. Tram just does great. It does good things against all teams. Next one, maybe a bit more, a bit less obvious directly, but 1 sec, I gotta pause again. Crap, I'm sorry. So, yeah, Slowbro, as I was saying, is a bit less obvious because it's not like a breaker. Like, you're not going to muscle past things with Slowbro, but Future Sight plus Teleport, when you pair it with something like an Urshifu, like a Cinderace, like a Garchomp, like a Landorus, Pokemon that are just naturally very common, all of a sudden they become super threatening. Let's use the Urshifu example as a very likely scenario. Turn 1. I have my Slowbro in against their Moltres, their Skarmory, their Corviknight, Pokemon that can't really threaten me too much. I go for Future Sight as they switch out to their Blissey, or their Zapdos, or whatever bulky Pokemon they have. Okay, and let's say they go for Toxic, or Seismic Toss, or whatever it might have you. I can even tank a Discharge or a Volt Switch from a bulky Zapdos, because it's a Slowbro at full health, and it's very easy to regen back up once you know it's not an offensive Zapdos. Next turn, I click Teleport, and I bring in my Urshifu. The combination of Wicked Blow and Future Sight is killing all those Pokemon. In addition, if it's Blissey, then Close Combat can one-shot it. They're forced to switch out. But wait. What if my counter to that Urshifu is something like a Toxapex, or Toxapex plus another Fighting Resist, and you've got to risk that 50-50? Or what if it's Buzzwole, which outright counters Urshifu, but it can't live a Future Sight, period? Then what? All of a sudden, you're out of Pokemon every time someone can successfully string this sequence together. You're basically forced to, at best, get a trade-off if you're able to damage Urshifu a lot that turn and live a hit and then die to Future Sight. And at worst, potentially, pivot around it and lose a guessing game or lose a Pokemon every single time. And this is a sequence that you could pull off almost infinitely against these teams because they aren't actually pressuring Slowbro, and Urshifu, the Pokemon that's maybe a bit more fragile, has free entry with Teleport. And all of a sudden, you notice that Teleport is not something that enables bulky things, but with Future Sight, it enables super offensive, proactive play with very common and accessible breakers. And you're like, wait a minute, Stall doesn't really have much way to counter this. That's crazy, isn't it? And it's in the metagame. That's crazy, isn't it? Yes, it is. And I'm just like, wait. Are people not seeing this? Are people not using this? It's very, very, very good. It's very, very, very easy to pull off. It's very practical. Bruh, come on. So I think it goes without saying that Slowbro itself is an indirect stall breaker right now, and that's absolutely amazing. And again, the Pokemon that can take advantage of Slowbro's presence in the metagame, the Urshifus, the Garchomps, the Cinderaces, they're still very common regardless. You could use them on teams and you'd be shocked by it. Really, these are Pokemon that are regardless, top 10, top 15, top 20 Pokemon, so it's a head scratcher as to why people I'm using Slowbro, it's a dead slot. No, Slowbro is super good in these matchups. Another regenerator Pokemon that maybe a bit less directly like Slowbro, but can still enable this is Tornadus T. Why? Because he's going to be staying alive forever so long as boots are equipped. Nothing is really killing it besides Zapdos, which you turn out of or switch out of. You could knock things off repeatedly, or if you get some chip on something like a Zapdos, you get a nasty put off and just sweep if you're accurate enough. It's so low risk, high reward. Even if it's just knocking things off and forcing momentum and getting different breakers, it's an amazing catalyst to breaking through stall teams. And on top of that, I don't know how to call it a breaker, but it's something that could really set the tone, if you will. I think that's the best way to put it. And that alone, when you have the right breakers, even if they're super fragile things, Pokemon that are more glass cannon-like, like Pheromosa, which I'm not even including this because I'm assuming it's going to get banned, or something like Spectro, which doesn't like taking physical attacks, something like Tapu Lele, which doesn't really like taking attacks, period. It's super easy to string together sequences where you get those Pokemon in safely because of Pokemon like Slowbro or Tornadus T. And, that's really all you could ask for. Pokemon becoming more accessible against all teams so you could use them to break. And I mean, I think Spectre is a pretty self-explanatory one. It's gonna get nasty plots up, subs up, and just start breaking through your team. Yeah, if you got like the right teleport combination, you can keep it in check. But even then, people have been running Dark Pulse more and more, and it's just really hard considering how strong it is and how the Mono Ghost typing with Substitute is super annoying. Spectre is amazing on stall teams, against stall teams rather, and you just got the right set for right occasion. It's a little bit dicey in that regard if the wrong set versus the wrong thing, or you like run Mono Ghost against say Blissey, that's tough, but yeah, it could still push the envelope. You just have to be careful. Specs Lele, I mean, Specs Lele. Oh god, Specs Lele. I mean, where do I begin? I don't even know where I begin, honestly. The thing about Specs Lele is that like outright can actually like pick apart stall teams if it clicks the right move. Like Psychic can demolish like the Zapdos, Moltres type of Pokemon. The Toxic is one shot. Psyshot, same thing to Blissey, just obliterates it. Moonblast against Dark types, forget about it. And then Focus Blast all steals. Like there's nothing on stall teams you see. There's no Jirachi or Aegislash on these stall teams that actually can check it. And this is with Psychic Surge still being more weak. I mean, I don't know without saying. Use Tapu Lele more, honestly. I know it doesn't get tricked. I know it's not the fastest Pokemon or the most durable Pokemon, but it breaks balance with the right support. It breaks stall with the right support. It's super strong. It gives you a fairy type. It's really good. Use Tapu Lele. This is like an endorsement video for Tapu Lele. Please try that out. Next up we have, stall killers. And I'm sorry this is kind of choppy because I haven't really rehearsed or thought this out through as much as other metagame Mondays, admittedly, and I'm also kind of tired. I got to get to work tomorrow morning, so these ones are more self-explanatory. Swords Dance Garchomp with Life Orb is very hard to wall. Even things like Clefable get 2-killed or one-shotted by Earthquake with Life Orb potentially. Stealth Rock also, with the right moves, it can threaten every single defogger. Stone Edge, for example, beats everything besides Corviknight at +2 with Life Orb. And getting up Stealth Rock and forcing them to be up against all teams is amazing. And also it isn't really fragile. Like it gets in a couple times, even if it's Life Orb. So yeah, it goes without saying that Garchomp is great. Magearna. Well, as for Magearna, it is a couple ways of beating stall teams, or at least chipping them down. I mean, the spec set's obviously great, but that really is limited in the sense that, okay, it can break stall teams with Trick, because you trick the Blissey, you Volt Switch all around everything, but they can have a ground type. They should have a ground type at least. And on top of that, also, once you get the Trick off, if you get into the wrong thing, it's kind of useless. If you face a random, especially defensive packs with ground, or Slubber Galar, it's kind of meh. So it's not the best stall breaker, but it's good at forcing things, forcing a trick, forcing specific switching patterns, and using them with Volt Switch or switching out. And when you pair Magearna with, say, an Urshifu or Future Sight with a physical attacker, then all of a sudden, that core alone can single-handedly just completely make a stall team self-destruct, honestly. And I think that goes without saying that sometimes it's not only breakers, but rather elements of positioning that can make it so that beating stall teams is more possible than you would have once imagined. Maybe I don't have an outright Pokemon that's going to 6-0 these stall teams, but at the same time, it's just okay. I mean, I can still methodically break it down over time, and that goes a very long way towards making these stall teams, go poof, go away. I mean, if you're looking at it super linearly, then yes, stall teams are super hard to beat. But if you actually play it out and you use enough momentum and enough longevity, then they're gonna fall apart over time. You just gotta really be methodical about it, if that makes sense. Alright, next up we have Magnezone. Magnezone is just, if they have a steel type like a Skarmory or a Corviknight, getting them out of the way with the right partners means that it's pretty much game over. And also, it's hard to switch into because eventually Blissey's, taking 20-25% every time it comes in. And then, after a couple right sequences, you're going to be able to kill it, especially if you're in Steel Beam in the back. So, yeah, if you pair it with even a right special attacker, it can go off. So, yeah. As for Mymetal, it's a bit of a weird case because Choice Band Mymetal, if you click the right move, or even the 3 attacks per tech variant, it actually is super hard to switch into, but at least all teams can run, Skarmory or Corviknight, but switching into Choice Band for them isn't even super easy. And also, if you pair it with something like Magnezone or, something like Reliable Stealth Rocker, and you just get the sequences right 1 or 2 times, it actually can force progress. Admittedly, it's a bit less direct and a bit less efficient than some of the other Pokemon we've been mentioning, but I still feel like it does deserve some mention here. Next up, though, a Pokemon that deserves a lot more mention is Clefable. Clefable, something that you see on stall teams a lot. With Magic Guard, it's actually very hard for stall teams to defeat. Calm Mind sets also can be a super potent win condition against them. Moonblast from Life Orb also can do a lot of things like opposing Clefable and Quagsire, which maybe you can run unaware in those teams and stop sweeping. Really, all you can do with it when you say have a Blissey is just Thunderwave it, and Blissey's been running Thunderwave less and less. So, yeah, Common Clefable really underrated right now. I definitely would love using it against the Assault team. It just sits there forever, and nothing really threatens it. Whereas it can just boost up, and it's kind of the dream setup slipper for those matchups. It and Nicholas, which we'll get to, as well as kind of Hatterene. So yeah. Next up, we have Latios. Latios with Draco Meteor. It's very hard, but Trick is able to just basically take the Pokemon that it wouldn't hit as hard out of the game, be it a Clefable or a Chansey or Blissey or even, other Pokemon that can keep that in check. Other steel types, it goes without saying that Latios itself is an offensive menace with Trick. Nothing can really minimize what it can do, even if it's just crippling a Pokemon. And again, once you cripple one thing, it's kind of a domino effect. One thing gets out of commission, then all of a sudden they are struggling to check another thing, and then they've got to fodder things, and the team just starts to fall apart over time. So again, be methodical, be patient, and that is possible. And last, but certainly not least, we also have some more fringe Pokemon that are able to beat it. Kartana with Swords Dance. If it runs Giga Impact, it can break through to Moltres, Zapdos types. But if it faces, Buzzwole or Tangrowth, it's not great. So it's really more against specific stall teams it'll do well, especially if it has Giga Impact. But otherwise, it might just be maxing out, crippling a couple things, forcing some switches. But with support, even then, it could potentially beat them. Groudon is a traditional stall killer. It's very hard to check. If you don't have a Buzzwole or like a really bulky Groudon, starts their Tangrowth, and even then, it's hard to necessarily say you're going to keep it in check. Then you are very likely to get at least one kill with Groudon. If you pair it with a Trick Room or you pair it with Healing Wish, then it could potentially just clean games out. Sun teams with Torkoal, things like Charizard and Victini, Cinderace and Sun are very hard to keep in check. It goes without saying that those teams already are very strong, but now when you don't have the ability to change weather, because all teams don't, and your walls do not pose a much offensive threat, and there's no priority in your team, it's very hard to actually keep them in check. You really have to have hard counters to things that you just don't have hard counters, so you can't afford them. So yeah, I think that Sun teams are great. Hatterene, kind of like the Nicholas or Clefable type in a sense that it can set up without really risking status. Magic Bounce is super great also because it deters their way of making progress with something like Skarmory or Stealth Rocks, but of course you have to be careful there as well. It doesn't have natural cover besides leftovers and Draining Kiss, so that limits it, but still Hatterene has been super problematic in stall teams before. Dracozolt on sand teams is obviously faster than everything, but also with the combination of Bolt Peak, Draco Meteor, and Fire Blast, it's able to really 2KO everything. It's super hard. It is prediction you got to get the moves right, and you don't have a ton of longevity, but if you pair it with Wish or Healing Wish, especially good, but that's hard to come by. So yeah, it's usually good for two kills, I'd say, if you play it right. So definitely aim for that. I think it's a really underrated option on sand teams as well. And last but not least, Zarude. It's super bulky. Jungle Healing helps it soak up status, and it also beats Unaware Quagsire, and you can trade with a normal non-Unaware Clefable as well, which is super important. And if you trade, actually win the 1v1 if you get a bulk when switching because you took out and you don't die to a Moonblast, and you potentially Jungle Healing later against something you're threatened out. So yeah, Hurricane, Zapdos, and Flame Body Moltres, it can potentially beat it, but even then, you could live an uninvested Hurricane from Zapdos and Tokyo with a +1 Darkest Lariat. And if you don't get burnt by Heatran, by Moltres, then beat that as well because it doesn't one-shot you. And it's just a really underrated option in my eyes as well, especially since it does super well against Spectre and some ground types too. So yeah, all in all, I know this was a bit more brief. I know we didn't go into super what makes stall and what makes these breakers, but I give good enough descriptions where I think it should make sense. And why I personally believe stall is just overrated right now. If you guys want me to do a bit more of an in-depth video on this, I completely get it. But A, I wanted to combine this Metagame Monday with some stuff on UU and RU. I did videos on those bans that'll go up later today. And B, I also feel like stall alone right now in this metagame just isn't prominent enough for its own Metagame Monday fully on. That's why I kind of want to make it a two-part day. And I really don't think stall is that good right now. So people complaining about it, to put it bluntly, take your heads out of your asses. I promise you, if you guys listen to some of these instructions and start playing a little bit more proactively and a little bit more attentively and not rushing things as much, then you'll be fine. Same goes for playing against balance, by the way. It's not really night and day. It's the same game of Pokemon you're playing, believe it or not. But yeah. All right, guys. Hope you have a great day. Hope you guys all stay safe and have a good week. And if you guys want to see more, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. If you guys have any thoughts, let me know in the comments below. And if you guys want to keep in touch, check out the Twitter, check out the Discord, all will be linked below. But yeah, I got to get going. So peace out, guys. Have a great day. Bye-bye.